Hello all, welcome back. I am your host, Christian Watson, also known as Mr. Watson. It's good to see you guys today. So, that sigh of exasperation simply captures all of my feelings about the past days. As I mentioned before, I am feeling incredibly, what's the word for it? I'm just feeling tired, my friends. It's like, in a sense, I am right here and I'm just being assailed, and we're all just being assailed by a lot of energy and incoming and barbs and arrows, and I'm trying to deflect them from every point intellectually, but they just keep hitting, and it obscures our mind, it cloaks our ability to understand things correctly. And I think that a recent speech made by someone who I used to really respect, and in a sense I guess I do still respect, Arnold Schwarzenegger, is a prime example of one of those barbs and arrows which mislead us from the truth. So, Arnold Schwarzenegger recently made this video in which he said that Donald Trump is a failed leader and he urged unity after the Capitol siege. I had a chance to watch a little bit of it, and the little bit that I did watch was primarily logically erroneous and conceptually flawed, not because of its subject matter, not because of its thesis, but because of how Schwarzenegger formulates his points and because of some of the points Schwarzenegger makes. So I'm going to actually react to his video right here, and we're going to see exactly why his message is logically erroneous and why I think he could have said things much better and why I think that there's a better perspective to be had on the issue. So let's see what's going on. Start it from the beginning. Hold on. Okay, full screen. No, not full screen. Let's just do that, yeah.
As an immigrant to this country, I would like to say a few words to my fellow Americans and to our friends around the world about the events of recent days. Now, I grew up in Austria. I'm very aware of Kristallnacht, or the Night of Broken Glass.
Okay. For those of you who don't know, Kristallnacht is essentially a terroristic event in which Jewish citizens in Germany were targeted. Well, particularly a particular Jewish figure was targeted, but Jewish citizens in general were targeted, and they were attacked, and they were lanced, and their businesses were burnt down and torched by arsonists. It was essentially an all-out attack on Jewish people. He's phrasing his argument, which has to do with President Trump, and has to do with the Capitol riots, with that atrocious event. This is what happens when he's necromancing history, bringing forth the pain and the memory and the emotional minutia of Kristallnacht into an event which was nothing like Kristallnacht, either in scale or in the scope of damage or in intention. He's doing that to draw up emotional energy and use that pathos to increase the validity, or the supposed validity, of his arguments, rather than actually relying on a contention that is backed up by reason, backed up by logic, and verified by empirical data. The philosophers like Locke understood the need to have reason accentuate and synthesize with logic and empiricism to go ahead and make claims. He's doing something completely different here. He is completely and utterly reconstructing history, reimagining, as many leftists would say, history, and he's using it as a bludgeon to mislead people about this current event. And I'm certain that he's not trying to mislead people, but that is the effect of his action. Doesn't matter. Intent does not matter, Mr. Schwarzenegger and other people, if the effects of your action say what they say. Intent does not supersede the effects of your action. And so this is actually an image of Kristallnacht. This is a synagogue that was destroyed by the rabid Nazis in the late 1930s during Kristallnacht. The U.S. Capitol doesn't even look this bad. What happened at the U.S. Capitol was condemnable. It was wrong. It was foul. If you guys want to hear more of my opinions on that, watch my Pensive Politics podcast episode that has the Capitol was titled "The Capitol Riots Show a Dark Day in America." I'm not justifying it, but Kristallnacht is on a different moral dimension than what happened at the Capitol a few days ago. Let's continue.
It was a night of rampage against the Jews carried out in 1938 by the Nazi equivalent of the Proud.
Okay. This is going to be a long video. Okay. The Proud Boys are not Nazis. And you should not make an equivalency between the Proud Boys and Nazis. The Proud Boys are simply people who believe in the superiority of Western ideals. They call themselves male chauvinists. All chauvinists is a chauvinist is someone who is full of pride. He is full to the brim with pride about a particular thing. For the Proud Boys, that pride gears them towards Western values, Western civilization, whatever that might mean. That might mean the traditions that are birthed from a lot of countries in the Western Hemisphere. Now, look, personally, I'm not a fan of the Proud Boys, but I don't think they're Nazis. I'm a Christian. I think that all pride, being full of pride, is to be devoid of grace, to be devoid of a divine sort of thinking, to be devoid of humility, which is integral to being able to see the truth of the world. Because if you're full of yourself, how can you see externally? If you're full of yourself, you're going to have a sort of allegory of the cave situation where all you can see is your reflection, the reflections of what might be there, the reflections of the truth. If you're full of yourself, there is a world that exists beyond you. That's the problem with the Proud Boys. But I don't think the Proud Boys are bad because they're Nazis. They're bad because, well, they're not necessarily. Let's continue, okay?
Wednesday was the day of broken glass right here in the United States. The broken glass was in the windows of the United States Capitol.
Okay, this is when you take a historical situation and you pair it to you have a modern parallel to that situation simply because there may be a certain similarity to the historical situation. He's not being fully intellectually honest up here.
But the mob did not just shatter the windows of the Capitol. They shattered the ideals we took for granted. They did not just break down the doors of the building that housed American democracy. They trampled the very principles on which our country was founded.
He's right.
Now, I grew up in the ruins of a country that suffered the loss of its democracy. I was born in 1947, 2 years after the Second World War. Growing up, I was surrounded by broken men drinking away their guilt over their participation in the most evil regime in history. Not all of them were rabid anti-Semites or Nazis. Many just went along, step by step, down the road. They were the people next door. Now, I've never shared this
So, what he's doing is he's using a rhetorical device here to make it seem as if those who went into the Capitol committed an atrocity on the level of moral condemnation that Crystal Knock occupies. And he's phrasing that by saying, oh, these were people who were normal people, and they may not have even been bad people. They were just... It's very deceitful, my friends. We have to stop that. You cannot continue to compare politicians to Hitler or to atrocities like this when the situations that they undertook don't even resemble the atrocities in moral condemnability, or don't even resemble them empirically insofar as the atrocities happened.
Because it is a painful memory. But my father would come home drunk once or twice a week.
Terrible.
And he would scream and hit us.
Terrible.
Scare my mother.
Terrible.
I did not hold him totally responsible because our neighbor was doing the same thing to his family, and so was the next neighbor over. I heard it with my own ears and saw it with my own eyes. They were in physical pain from the shrapnel in their bodies and in emotional pain from what they saw or did. It all started with lies and lies and lies and intolerance.
So this is another part of the problem. This is kind of one of the reasons why I think this entire Capitol Hill riot situation has been blown out of proportion, because a lot of people are trying to blame the riots on Antifa rather than blaming the riots on the people who actually claim to be Trump supporters, who actually claim to walk in his name, who actually don't like Antifa. I mean, Bevelyn Beatty was there. She stormed the Capitol. Bevelyn Beatty said on her own channel that this was not Antifa. This is Bevelyn Beatty, one of the most staunchest Trump supporters in existence. She said the Capitol riots were not Antifa. Brandon Tatum, one of the most staunch Trump supporters, he said the Capitol riots are not Antifa. How much more proof do you need? Nicholas Fuentes, Baked Alaska. There were so many people on the right, so many personalities who went into the Capitol or who can attest that the Capitol riots were not Antifa. And so, personal responsibility, though, where does this come into his point? Personal responsibility is still very important. So, I don't know the details, the intimacy of Mr. Schwarzenegger's childhood experiences, but his father and the neighbor should absolutely be held responsible for beating people up. I don't care if they were in pain. I don't care if they were motivated by something else. They have free will, and they took their volition, and they used their volition to unjustly strike the flesh of another. That's wrong. Let's go.
So being from Europe, I've seen firsthand how things can spin out of control. I know there is a fear in this country and all over the world that something like this could happen right here. Now, I do not believe it is, but I do believe that we must be aware of the dire consequences of selfishness and cynicism. President Trump sought to overturn the results of an election, and of a fair election. He sought a coup by misleading people with lies. My father and our neighbors were misled also with...
Okay, here's the false equivalencies. Oh, President Trump thinks the election is fraudulent. My father, who beat up people, my neighbor who beat up people, also were misled with lies. Therefore, there's an equivalency, other than just being entirely logically erroneous, by not drawing a causal link between two things that are similar in action, but distinct in location and distinct in occurrence. Other than just being logically erroneous for that particular reason, it's also an attempt to connect people with atrocious acts and therefore make the viewer or make the listener think that those two acts are equivalent and they should be held to the same level of moral condemnation, which then leads the viewer to be desensitized towards the idea of making anyone who is a Trump supporter or a conservative seem like an evil person. I don't think Schwarzenegger knows he's doing this, but it's very clever, it's very sly, and it's the reason why I'm making this video. It's not right.
Lies. And I know where such lies lead. President Trump is a failed leader. He will go down in history as the worst president ever. The good thing is that he soon will be...
worse than Andrew Johnson, who quite literally tried to stop the Reconstruction and tried to keep black folks subjugated beneath the boot of white terrorists in the early 1870s, late 1860s. Worse than LBJ, who was an avowed racist. Worse than Woodrow Wilson, who supported eugenics and was also an avowed racist as well. Look, people, we oftentimes have a very compartmentalized and recent understanding of history. If Schwarzenegger actually goes back and looks at the history of the country and the presidents, I can find you many presidents that are on a level of moral condemnation and just putrid filth that no modern president comes close to.
As irrelevant as an old tweet. But what are we to make of those elected officials who have enabled his lies and his treachery? I will remind them of what Teddy Roosevelt said. Patriotism means to stand by the country. It does not mean to stand by the president.
By the way, Teddy Roosevelt, not to take away from what he said, I think that Roosevelt was correct. America is about the ideas of America, not about a particular person. But Teddy Roosevelt himself was someone who thought the government was a deity. He pushed for the federalization of lands, which assumes that the government has the moral imprimatur, the moral validity to decide how land is distributed and how land is protected or whatever. National parks, I mean, it's the same idea which completely and utterly violates prior property rights and completely and utterly presents this false notion of public property that if the public owns it, or if the government owns it, it's going to be maintained. He mixed stewardship up with government ownership. He did a lot of things that were bad because they rebel against the truth of property ownership. They rebel against the truth of stewardship. They rebel against the truth of these concepts. So let's let's just keep that in mind.
President. Now, John F. Kennedy wrote a book called Profiles in Courage. A number of members of my own party, because of their own spinelessness, would never see their names in such a book, I guarantee you. They're complicit with those who carried the flag of self-righteous insurrection into the Capitol.
No, they're not. If they didn't explicitly say, hey, go ahead and riot in the Capitol, you cannot hold them responsible. This is very simple. Personal responsibility must be the first degree of responsibility exerted upon to anyone in any situation.
But it did not work. Our democracy held firm. Within hours, the Senate and the House of Representatives...
Okay, this is what's getting me messed. This is what's really messing with me. The idea that he keeps phrasing America as a democracy, which it is not a democracy, and I'm going to have someone in my comments saying, well, Christian, if you vote to elect someone, it's a democracy, haha. No, you limp brain. It's not. Apologies to insult, but still, this gets on my nerves. Just because a system has a feature of another system does not mean that system is the other system. If my iPhone has a feature of something else, my iPhone has a battery. Has a battery in it. Cars have a battery. Those are two different things. Ergo, if democracy, you vote for everything, which is what a pure democracy is, or things are basically kept up to the public assent, demos, meaning the people, kratos, meaning power, then, if a republic is things are centralized and systematized in the way that people do have a say, but not an overarching say, a republic is founded on certain principles, upon certain inviolable principles that are put into a legal framework that supersede even the most passionate, rabid wills of the demos. They are distinct things conceptually. This is the conceptual error one of many that Arnold makes. This is not a democracy. This is a republic. Simple. Also, to put the republic, the entire being of the republic, into a single building is to cheapen our republic. This republic is much bigger, much greater, much stronger than what can be contained in a single building. Stop the rhetorical manipulation.
Representatives were doing the people's business in certifying the election of President-elect Biden.
And let me just be clear. The Capitol riots were wrong. The certification process needed to happen constitutionally. I'm not arguing that. I'm arguing how he is presenting these points.
What a great display of democracy.
Jesus.
Now, I grew up Catholic. I went to church,
What does that
Catholic school.
What does that have to do with anything?
I learned the Bible and my catechism and
Okay.
all this. And from those days, I remember a phrase that is relevant today. A servant's heart. It means serving something larger than yourself. See, what we need right now from our elected representatives is a public servant's heart. We need public servants that serve something larger than their own power or their own party. We need public servants who will serve higher ideals, the ideals in which this country was founded, the ideals that other countries look up to. Now, over the past few days,
I have been saying this for a very long time. I don't mind this whatsoever. The problem is, see, when you say a public servant, then you say you have to serve ideas. You are talking about two very distinct things. And the lack of distinction within Arnold Schwarzenegger's contention leads to confusion. So let's stop calling them public servants if we want them to serve ideas and not personalities or not party rules. Don't call them public servants. Because the public, again, this is the problem with democracy, could go against the ideas of the Constitution or the ideas of liberty or the blessings of liberty. The public could eschew those things. But just because the public eschews those things and you're supposed to serve the public does not mean your servitude to the United States Constitution is also supplanted. Do you see the point here, Arnold? How you phrase things and how you treat concepts is going to be very important to how your argument is not only received, but to how it is formulated and to what it sounds like.
Friends from all over the world have been calling me distraught and worried about us as a nation. One woman was in tears about America. Wonderful tears of idealism about what America should
Notice the music in the background.
Those tears should remind us.
It's trying to tug at your heartstrings. This is not a message that is replete with logic and rigid argumentation. It is one that is replete with emotional appeals. And that's fine. I do my own fair share of emotional appeals. But I make sure to temper them with logic and reason. Or I try to, at least. I'm still learning.
What America means to the world. Now, I've told everyone who is called that as heartbreaking as all of this is, America will come back from these dark days and shine our lights once again. Now you see this sword? This is the Conan sword.
I will say, Conan the Barbarian is a great concept, great movie, great comic book character. Okay. I think these are concerning times, my friends. But this country is so vast. It is filled with boundless potential. It is filled with courageously and righteously motivated people. You shouldn't see America as having a dark day because of a single occurrence that we are recovering from almost instantly. I think the mental wounds of the Capitol riots are a little bit bigger than the actual wounds to the processes of our government. And that's understandable. America is not just a process. America is an idea. And the idea of America was under assault at that point by the people who stormed the Capitol. Now, there are plenty of people who were actually not storming the Capitol, who were simply peacefully protesting, and Arnold is not addressing that. And you have the right to peaceably assemble, and there were thousands peaceably assembled at the foot of the Capitol.
Now, here's the thing about swords. The more you temper a sword, the stronger it becomes. The more you pound it with a hammer and then heat it in the fire and then thrust it into the cold water and then pound it again and plunge it into the fire and into the water, the more often you do that, the stronger it becomes. I'm not telling you all this because I want to become an expert sword maker, but our democracy is like the steel.
We're not a
of this
democracy.
sword. The more it is tempered, the stronger it becomes. Our democracy has been tempered by wars, injustices, and insurrections. I believe, as shaken as we are by the events of recent days, we will come out stronger because we now understand what can be lost. We need reform.
Well,
so that this never ever happens again.
Okay, what are you gonna do? Okay, let's see if he offers a solution that is compatible with liberty.
We need to hold accountable the people that brought us to this unforgivable point. And we need to look past ourselves, our parties, and disagreements, and put our democracy first.
So vague platitudes, some of which could involve potential rights violations. I'm going to need more than vague platitudes if we're going to actually solve this issue, or the presumed issue.
And we need to heal together from the drama of what has just happened. We need to heal not as Republicans or as Democrats,
I'm fine with this.
but as Americans.
Again, platitudes though.
Now, to begin this process, no matter what your political affiliation is, I ask you to join me in saying to President-elect Biden, President-elect Biden, we wish you great success as our president. If you succeed, our nation succeeds. We support you with all our hearts as you seek to bring us together. And to those who think they can overturn the United States Constitution.
Okay. If someone has told you, if someone comes to your house, your door, and they put a gun to your head, they said, you know what? I'm going to open up your house to the entire world. Insofar as your house, you people in your house are going to be more involved in the community. I'm going to make sure all the utilities in your house are geared towards a particular purpose, and that the people in your house who make the most money, they're going to pay more. If someone came into your house and began shouting these kind of things at you and demanding certain things of you, and then they walked away, with a smile and said, "I'll be back," would you then therefore wish them success? I understand as an American, you're supposed to wish the president success, but I hope that Joe Biden fails at what he wants to do. I pray that Joe Biden is not successful in introducing Biden care and weakening private healthcare options. I pray that Joe Biden, the Secretary of State that's not already nominated, I hope he's not successful in introducing a new era of American imperialism in which we are the world's policemen. I pray that Kamala Harris is not successful in her pipe dream, in her aim of convincing millions of black Americans that they are victims and they are slaves to history. This kind of sanctimony is what I can't handle. I can't handle this kind of sanctimony. I pray for the failure of those unjust things. If Biden's going to do something that's going to strengthen the American experiment, protect our rights, good. If Biden wants to go ahead and reform the criminal justice system and abolish eminent domain and all that kind of stuff, good. But what I know Biden and Harris want to do are absolutely against our right. They want to put in a mass mandate potentially. Not a national one, but a one that is coordinated with certain state governments who will be subordinate and servile to their prodding. No, I do not wish success for that kind of administration. Never.
Know this, you will never win. President-elect Biden, we stand with you today, tomorrow, and forever in defense of our democracy from those who will threaten it. May God bless all of you. God bless America.
All right, so that was basically a 7-minute, almost 8-minute emotional appeal, which completely and utterly excluded logic. It trusts you to be willing to take historical parallels which make no logical sense, and even make no conceptual sense. It expects you not to have done research on the issue, and it expects you to believe that everyone at that Capitol was actually doing something that was fundamentally and manifestly unjust. They were not. There were people who were peaceful. Even the reporting on this, The Guardian even said a lot of people were peaceful. Now, this was like a small mirage of people, a very small contingent of crazy radicals that broke out and went to go into the Capitol. Deceptive. And look, I still like Arnold. I don't hate anyone because of their political opinions. I still like Arnold. And I agree with some of his messages. People should accept that Joe Biden is going to be the president. It's going to happen. I'm sorry. It's going to happen. But I'm not going to support that. I'm not going to support him. Right? I'm not going to hope that he does well because of his plans. His plans are terrible. I don't want his plans to do well, because if his plans do well, my rights go away. Or my rights are significantly suppressed. No, I don't want that to do well. So ultimately, my friends, look, you can make nice speeches, you can give platitudes, but can you really look at something and test its truth, as the ancient texts say, and discern for its validity for your own purposes, or for the purposes of actually finding the truth? Arnold thinks he has the truth. He has taken a few procedural missteps off the path, though. So let's get on the path. Let's not repeat Arnold's mistakes. And let's remember, my friends, that this country and your future is going to be determined by what you do and no one else. Think on it. As always, I love you guys. If you can, please donate to me if you want to see more content. My PayPal is at @officialcwatson. But until next time, my friends, please stay pensive. Hey guys, if you enjoyed this message, please be sure to support my channel through PayPal. My PayPal is @officialcwatson, as you see on the screen. Any amount helps. Thank you so much, and stay pensive.